thanks to Stephanie and Gordon, I'm so pleased to follow their presentation, and it was terrific. It was really terrific, and I was so pleased to see some really similar things, but used in totally different context in Texas, and especially south of Austin, where the small enclosures, the relicaritos, and the nichos, you know, more often you see small religious artifacts put in there, and that's how I see in the hornitos, the ovens. So that was really exciting. But today, I'm going to get accustomed to this first. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit. Mine is more of a travel log. I first encountered the work of Julius Jesse Thomas. It was on a site visit. I was giving a presentation up in Hillsborough area in Hill County, Texas. And so from about 5 or 6 years prior to this site visit in 2006, there had been a survey done. And so we had some information about what was there in the county at the different sites. And ones that had been rated as highly endangered were ones that if you were in the area, you went by to just check and see how things were going. And so there are 2 cemeteries right next to each other in Penelope, and one is a Czech cemetery where all of the photo porcelains had been popped off, every single grave marker. So we wanted to go back and see if there'd been any other damage done. But right next to it was a site called George Newton Cemetery. So that was in 2006, and it was fairly typical for what I expected of an African-American cemetery of that time period. And in that location, this is Penelope, Texas. Has anybody heard of Penelope? Yeah, I didn't think so. Rusty does not count, but I had not either. And so it's a very rural area. So we've got, great. So you've got cultural vegetation, possibly as grave markers. You've got seasonal growth with the grass, which is very normal. It was a beautiful, charming site. There were wildflowers. It was really beautiful. Well, I don't know, not traditional wildflowers. It was September, but there were different flowering plants and grasses, and it was really quite lovely. And there were 3 markers that were fairly close to each other, and clearly they were crafted by the same person. Now, this area that we are in, it is south. I'm going to back up just a second. I was jumping the gun. So we're south of Dallas. Austin's down here. So it's about 30 miles north of Waco and about 70 miles south of Dallas. And we're going to be focusing our travel kind of in this region, in this area. And so what we're noticing here is that there's 3, 2 singles and 1 double. But what was really fascinating about it is each one was signed on the back. Call Jesse Thomas, Mahia, Texas, phone GYG 7251. And I was like, that's brilliant. It's terrific. So I knew who the artist was, and I was fascinated by it, and quite honestly, I was charmed. I was charmed by all 3 of them in the grouping. I was charmed by the simplicity, but it was clearly something that was special and meaningful because it was completed on each one of them, save the more traditional, or Band-Aid style that was more traditional around the 50s, late 40s, early 50s. But 2 of them are exactly like this. So it was just fascinating. Many of them say, gone but not forgotten. These, at rest. I'm going to, let me see, there should be the basics. I'm going to jump back here real quick to Bobby Anthony. I did not notice this that day. And to be honest, I didn't notice it until a friend pointed it out to me later. But you've got the inverted 4. And it could be a couple of different reasons. It could have been inverted on purpose. Some would suggest that that was a purposeful thing that culturally is significant in an African American grave marker. Others might say it's a typo, an accident. We don't know. But it's definitely there. But it's the only instance that I've seen of the 4 being inverted. So then, a number of years later, I was in Falls County at another African American cemetery site with a bunch of our archaeologists doing some work. And this is, so here's Penelope area where George Newton's site is. We were down here in Falls County, which is still kind of in this same regional area. So this was a few years later, no, 1 year later. And at China Grove, you can see where the church had been at one point in time. The site we were working at was, I don't know, a couple of miles down the road. And we had gone for lunch, and we were in the area, and the band said, hey, let's stop. There's another cemetery. Let's go check it out. So it was completely in ruins at that point. And you can see a few markers here and there. This was taken, I can tell you this picture from Google was not taken in July. It's a lot more dense there. There was more poison ivy than I'd seen in a lot of other places. But so bingo, here's the exact same marker. And I'd not seen another one, but to be honest, I hadn't been looking for them. But I was really interested, but not as interested as one of the guys that I was with. And his name's David Bruner. And I had just met him that day for the first time, and he had worked with Carol McDavid and done a lot of research on some additional sites in Texas. And he was so excited to see this because he said, this is really important stuff, and it's relatable to, you know, Thompson's Flash of the Spirit and that water symbol, that connection, and that transition into the afterlife. And I was like, well, that makes sense. And the use of that symbol in the 2 places that I've seen, but you can't, I mean, I've only seen 2 grave markers, and so that's certainly not enough to go on. Let's see. Added to this one, it's been written here in this area. It said, I heard the voice of Jesus saying, come unto me and rest. Now that's the only time I've seen anybody go back to one of these and add an inscription or add anything for that matter. But David was really excited about this, and so I started to pay a little bit more attention. Over the course of time, you know, of course I was looking at a number of other handcrafted artists and had been following a number of people, but after noticing that one, I just stuck my pen in the center and drew a circle around, and I expected, based Hill County, where Penelope is, here's Falls County. We know, thankfully, since he signed them, that he's working out of Mejia, which is in Limestone County. So using Mejia as the center point, and knowing that we're finding them in Hill and Falls, it would stand to reason that you would find them within this area. And I sent out a call to 20, well, there's more than 20, but I expanded it a little bit. So I sent out a call to county cemetery contacts in a 20 county radius, expecting to get no responses at all. But I got a lot. And that was really surprising too, because I didn't think that anybody else had been paying attention to these. But this geographic distribution is kind of important, but it falls within what I expected. So that was not surprising. And so, you know, what these guys are doing is essentially maintaining conditions assessments of all the sites within a county, these county cemetery contacts. Sometimes they function within our county historical commissions, which we have in Texas in each of the 254 counties. which is really helpful because there's no way you can cover that kind of ground. And of course, some are more effective or have different interests. Some are genealogists, some are, but the ones that are really interested in this type of work responded immediately. And so what we're seeing is, in addition to the two that I had seen my own self, we know for sure that we had reports from limestone, freestone, and Navarro. And so there are some variations in symbol from what these guys are sending back. And the bulk of them came from Bruce Jordan, who's terrific, and he's the county cemetery contact in Limestone County. But they're all over. So you have a repetition, and this symbol is very similar to the ones in both Falls County and Hill County. But then you've got the repetition in that bit there. And then in others, this is in Falls County, sent by a friend. Very similar, but this one has a different number of teeth than the others. Because at first I was trying to figure out, what is he using? Is it like a tool? Is it a saw that is being used to press this? Or did he actually make this? Because the other stuff, the letters are the same. So we know he's got, or what I speculate, is that he has a tool bin that has these same size letters, and he uses, and the gone but not forgotten may be one piece. Maybe it's not, I don't know, I haven't taken the time to figure that bit out. But is the saw one piece or something that he's created by hand, or does he have multiple metal bits that he's created that he's pressing into them? And how does he choose? I don't know. So you've got the number of teeth, differentiation, and this one is totally different. Someone's gone back in afterwards and taken a Sharpie to it, or black paint, to make it stand out a little bit more, but it's a totally different. And then this one is completely different, but how do I know it's his? Because he signed the back. I mean, it looks exactly the same. The date configuration is the same. The gone but not forgotten is the same. But the water symbol is entirely different. And this one is a little bit later. No, this one is from the 40s. So I don't know how they choose it. And then this one, oddly enough, is also his, but it's totally different. So a couple of these, and these, the very different ones are found very close around Mejia. So it's somebody that he knew really well, that he was willing to say, okay, I'm going to do this specialized, very personalized one for you. But I get the impression that it was kind of a business, and he was pretty busy. Because at this point, we know, I've seen pictures of 37 markers in 8 different counties at 14 different sites. So in the giant scheme of things, that's not a huge number, but it's significant for a handcrafted gravemarker artist when I think about what I typically see around a state as big as Texas. You know, typically it's within a 2 to 3 county range. It's tied by family members, and you can tell that by the last names, and then by the responses that you get back from existing family members. But this guy is everywhere. And so, of course, as I'm doing this, I'm seeing a bunch of different but relatable symbols, which after talking with some colleagues, that too could be interpreted as another water, a passage symbol. And I don't know what to call a lot of these folks, because on these others, I'm not as lucky as somebody stamping their name and their phone number in the back. So you just don't know who these folks are. But this one is in Grimes County, Grimes County Star. But I've not seen any of his outside of Grimes County. This is in Anderson County. And so while I'm noting and following some of these other folks, I'm noting and following, this one I call Little Mirrors, because it's glitter. So while the grave marker is still wet, she takes this glitter and smears over the top of it. And for the most part during the day, you can't really see what the full effect of that glitter is. But at certain times of the day, the first time I saw this one, I was clear on the other side of the cemetery, and it was like a beacon coming up because the light hit it at just the right time, and it popped like crazy. So a friend of mine, knowing that I was following this artist too, and I should say, if anyone is here from the state of Texas, from the government, this was all done on my own time. It was all outside of work. So a friend had told me that they saw a number of little mirrors at a site down in Bastrop. So I went, and sure enough, the whole cemetery, they had requested her work. And so I don't know if there were not grave markers there before, but 90% of the grave markers at this site had been created all at the same time, different death dates, but all at the same. So I was really excited. So the largest part of the cemetery was African American. There was a small Anglo section in the back, a Mexican American section in the back. And so I was out back there looking, and in the back 40, way in the back, oh, sorry, by the way, we're now down in Bastrop, way down in Bastrop. So this is about 200 miles from Austin to Dallas, and so this is way down there. And definitely way far away from Mahia and Penelope. And I see this one. And that's it. That totally blew my geographic distribution plan out of the water. Because, was he really as successful as I think he was? Was he really making a lot of money doing this? I can't imagine. But what we do know about Mahia is that at one point it was a big oil town. And then around the 30s, the Depression set in. Nobody had any money. Their population dropped by an amazing amount. And so everybody that once was employed successfully, all of a sudden was not by the early 30s. And so the death dates on these 37 markers that I've been able to see range from 1927 to 1969. So 1927, if you were looking for a new job around 1929, 1930, when the bust started to settle in, that makes sense. You do a few for some family members, you do a few more. What we do know, they're all very similar. I don't know that there's any rebar in these. I don't know, because the condition on all of them is fairly good, little need for conservation, and no evidence of repairs to the ones that we've seen. They're all upright, so we don't know what's underneath in the ground, but he did a good job. And I don't know. We also know fairly within a region where these different ones are, but we don't know how many more there are, because I haven't really had a chance to turn this into a huge body of work. But the tools, we know nothing about the tools. We don't know what he was using or who has them. And that's the really exciting part too, is there have been other somewhat similar designs that may have used the same size lettering, but it's a different design. So, and they're in the same area. So we just don't, a lot of unknowns about that. Originally trying to decide, is this a business or a service? Is it for sale or trade or for family members? And there doesn't seem to be anything at this point that indicates talking with family members from this line, because Bruce Jordan introduced us to a lot of these folks, and there's just no connection that's strong enough to indicate that that's the only connection. And stamping your name into the back indicates that he was certainly willing to travel to place these. And then the beginnings. How did he get started? Is it a family tradition, or was it financial need? I could speculate, but we really don't know. And then why do we need to know, too? Oh yeah, and this was kind of a bummer. I was expecting something with a little bit more personal flair, and I was really, it was not what I had expected at all. And we verified and triple checked. This is exactly who we think it is. And so can you imagine making your last grave marker like the year before you pass your own self too? Because the last grave marker I've seen with a death date is 69, and he passed in June of 70. So, you know, why is this important, and why is it significant? To me, I think they're beautiful. I think it's terrific. I did not. Juneteenth is, to most people, it's a very significant date in Texas and in many places. The date that the slaves were told that they were free. So in Texas, there's celebrations all over. I know it's big in Chicago. It's interesting. But so I was talking, and thanks to Dr. Perky Beisel, who helped me think about this a little bit more this morning, because the question was like, why is this important? What's the big deal about it? Because there are handcrafted grave markers and artists all over. And, you know, like with Little Mirrors, who's currently producing. And so this is not going to stop. But I think for my own self and people in Texas, these markers, the way that they were signed, is the closest thing we can get to the folks that are really involved with AGS and doing the research on the high style carved signed markers, you know, where folks follow that lineage, that carving lineage. And that really kind of hit it for me. And I was like, yeah, that is. Because it's exciting to think that somebody has this box of tools in their garage. We just haven't found them yet. So that's it. Do y'all have any questions?